Hi there, and welcome to Rewatching VeggieTales. I'm not Bob the Tomato or Larry the Cucumber, and this probably won't answer any of your questions. Unless your question is, what the Polish word for lip is. Today, I'll be talking about Dave and the Giant Pickle, first released on April 2nd, 1996. So, preconceptions. I'm going to skip over the obvious just for a bit and start in on the usual. I remember this one fairly clearly. It was the third episode we ever owned, and the first of the regular formula. The first two episodes we had as kids were The Toy That Saved Christmas and Very Silly Songs. I remembered that it was a biblical retelling of David and Goliath, with some funny undertones and an absolute slap of a song in the form of Big Things 2. And I remembered it was the introduction to the French peas. I even remembered that it was Jean-Claude and Christophe in this episode, not Jean-Claude and Philippe. And, of course, I remembered the opening countertop. I know that this is the most basic thing anybody who grew up with VeggieTales can say, but I love Larry Boy. I love the character. I love the franchise. I love the implications of his existence. A Larry Boy episode gave me a URL that I still use occasionally, and I hold it very near and dear to my heart. Which, if you know, you know. I'll probably hint at that a little bit more when we get to the two relevant episodes. So, suffice it to say, I was not at all surprised when the countertop opened and we got our first glimpse of Larry Boy. Larry is basically LARPing as his superhero self-insert OC before his plungers get stuck on the wall. Bob intervenes before the plungers eventually let go, and he points out that being a superhero looks painful, and suggests that Larry goes back to being plain old Larry. But Larry confesses that he doesn't want to be plain old Larry anymore. So Bob tells him about a letter they got from a child who felt like she wasn't special. Bob then decides to tell them both the story of A Boy Named Dave, which is not the name of the episode. The opening to Dave and the Giant Pickle is hilarious. Bob narrates as the camera kind of pans to try to find Dave, who's played by Junior, with Bob constantly stopping and going, "Oh, no, that's his brother," until we finally stop on a sheep who Dave is behind, as Bob delivers one of my favorite lines, which is just, "Shoo there, Fluffy." We learn that Dave is the smallest of his brothers, and that his older brothers, played by Jimmy, Jerry, and Tom, often pick on him and make him do their work for them. This is all a setup to Jesse, the boy's father, played by Pa Grape, running onto the scene to tell them that the Philistines are attacking, and that King Saul is putting together an army to save Israel. Dave wants to help, but is told by his father that he's too little, and that he needs to stay with the sheep, while his brothers, who are big people, do the big things. This leaves Dave to lament in a sad little ditty called Big Things 2. We then cut to the Israelites, who are at the battle camp, where the Philistines, played by the French peas, are lined up outside just yelling insults at them. This is also, I'm pretty sure, the only time the French peas are giving subtitles, which I thought was, notable. So anyway, our French Philistine peas are like, "Oh hey, here's an idea. How about instead of yelling and gruesome fighting, we'll send our strongest guy to go fight your strongest guy. Winner take it all, ABBA style." And the Israelites agree, only to find out that Goliath, the episode's titular giant pickle, is the Philistines' champion. Gasp! And by the way, the camera perspective on Goliath's reveal? Perfection. We then fade to black and are introduced to this episode's silly song. I remembered this one word for word, so I didn't think there was going to be much I could take out of it. For the uninitiated, Love My Lips is a song skit where Larry is a therapy patient of Archibald's, where he spends the whole time just talking about his lips, his fears about losing his lips, his childhood trauma with his lips, you name it. It's a pretty funny premise and a decently catchy tune, and I will say that the scat bit was a lot funnier than I remembered. And while I have you here, I would like to let you all know, usta is not Polish for lip, but it is Polish for mouth. The Polish word for lip is warga, at least according to Google Translate. After Larry Goes to Therapy, the musical, we find out that the Israelites have straight up been just hiding from Goliath for over a month. Jesse was worried about the boys, so he sends Dave to the camp with some food. Dave gets the lowdown and is like, "Well, why isn't anyone going to go fight him? Did y'all forget we're God's chosen people, or..." After finding out that his brothers are cowards, Dave goes straight to King Saul, played by Archibald Asparagus, declaring his intent to fight Goliath himself. They then launch into a duet of the full Big Things 2, which absolutely, wait for it, slaps. By the end of the song, Dave has managed to persuade the king to let him fight Goliath, since he'll have the power of God and anime on his side. Though Saul still seems a little uncertain. God tells Dave to go get some rocks, and so that's what he does. He comes back to fight Goliath, seemingly empty-handed, but, like a drag race contestant about to lip-sync for her life, set with a wig or tearaway, Dave takes off his hat to reveal the rocks, and he just slingshots one off of his noggin, KO Goliath. Our little dude is celebrated, and he rides off into the sunset with the sheep he rode in on. Back on the countertop, Larry has laughed, Larry has cried, he has been moved, Bob. Bob and Larry check to see if QWERTY has a verse, and QWERTY quite literally tells them that with God, all things are possible, so you might want to jot that down. Bob assures Larry that as long as he's okay with being plain old Larry, dressing up as Larry Boy, or whoever he wants, is okay. Larry seems happy with this, and Bob closes out the show with Larry choosing to stay behind and LARP some more. I enjoyed this episode. The humor was strong and the lesson was taught clearly without feeling excessive. The animation doesn't hold up as well by our current standards, but it's already a lot better than the first 2 episodes were. The silly song was strong, and it was our introduction to our favorite plunger-headed hero. And speaking of, I know it might seem a little silly of me to give my favorite character award to somebody who didn't, act in the episode proper, but Larry is absolutely iconic here. Asking if God could turn him into a chicken? I laughed, I cried, it moved me, Bob. I'm a Larry-go-round? Absolute icon of a cucumber. We have no choice but to stand. As much fun as I had watching this, I can't say it would be my top recommendation to someone looking to revisit the series, let alone someone looking to be introduced. It's a fun episode. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It just isn't the strongest. It's plain old VeggieTales. And that's all the time we have for today, kids. Remember, 10 days after I turned 8, got my lip stuck in a gate. My friends all laughed, and I just stood there until the fire department came and broke the lock with the crowbar, and I had to spend the next 6 weeks in lip rehab with this kid named Oscar who got stung by a bee right on the lip, and we couldn't even talk to each other until the 5th week because both of our lips were so swollen, and when he did start speaking, he just spoke Polish, and I only knew 3 words in Polish, except now I know 4 because Oscar taught me the word for lip, and it wasn't usta.